They told us the war was over. The words echoed through every comms channel, every display feed, every goddamn neural stream, like a lullaby meant to soothe a dying child. The interstellar Concord has been signed. Hostilities are to cease immediately. All Terran combatants are ordered to stand down. But peace doesn't come in a single broadcast. Not when the blood is still warm on your hands. Not when the screaming hasn't stopped in your skull. Not when you watch your own planet burn. I remember the last image I saw of Earth. Not from orbit. Not some poetic view of oceans wrapped in clouds. No, I saw Earth from the surface, through smoke and flames as orbital rods slammed into cities like the judgment of indifferent gods. I saw my wife's body buried under the rubble of our apartment complex. I saw my daughter's toy, a one-eyed bear, melted into glass near what was once her school. They called it a miscalculated escalation. I called it what it was. Genocide. But then came the Concord, an agreement brokered by those who had the luxury of clean hands and safe homes. The Drellians, the Vexry, even the Terran High Command, cowards in orbiting fortresses far from any front line. They shook hands, signed digital scrolls, and called it done. I was on the Los V when the ceasefire was declared. A mining colony turned battlefield, turned graveyard. The air still stank of plasma residue. I had just pulled the trigger on a Vexry shock trooper when the command blared in my helmet. I froze mid-kneel, pulse still thudding, as the words rang out. The war's over. The bastard didn't hesitate. His claws ripped into my armor. I went down hard, blood bubbling in my lungs. But instinct and spite can do wonders. I reached for my sidearm and painted the canyon walls with his insides. That's when I realized something. Only humans were listening. The others, the aliens we had bled against for the last 7 years, they were still moving, still killing, still watching us through helmet cams and recon drones like they were waiting for something. Some of them celebrated. Others just stared. But none of them disarmed. That night, the stars were unnaturally quiet. Then came the retrieval teams, clean, shiny, bureaucratic. They loaded us into med pods like expired equipment. No ceremony, no apology, just numbers. They tried to retire me after that. Hooked me into a therapy module for a few weeks on Luna Base. Let it go, they said. Heal. But I didn't want to heal. I wanted clarity. I started digging, pulling old comms logs, sifting through black box helmet feeds from operatives who didn't make it home, piecing together transmissions the peace brokers tried to bury under red tape and encryption. What I found was simple. The war wasn't over. It had just evolved. The enemy learned we couldn't be beaten in the open, so they changed tactics. Subterfuge, diplomacy, manipulation. The interstellar Concord wasn't surrender. It was a rebranding, a slow kill. We were being pacified, not spared. And the worst part? Our leaders knew. They traded our rage for stability, our pain for political leverage. The Concord gave them seats at the galactic table. But for soldiers like me, it gave us nothing but ghosts. So I left, burned my credentials, scrubbed my ID tag, and vanished into the shadows of the outer belt. I wasn't alone. There were others, ghosts of Earth, like me, soldiers, scientists, engineers, AI handlers. The ones who couldn't forget. The ones who wouldn't forgive. We called ourselves Red Arc, a play on going dark, on rejecting the light of false peace. And we had a plan. If the galaxy wanted to believe the war was over, so be it. We'd start a new one they couldn't predict, one they couldn't control. A war not for revenge, but for reclamation, not just of territory, but of truth. And if we had to become monsters to do it, then let the stars tremble. It began on Cradle Station, a forgotten satellite orbiting the wreck of Vesa Prime. It was once a civilian science hub before the Vexry glassed the planet below. Now, it was a husk, silent, lifeless, or so the galaxy thought. But beneath the rusted hulls and blackout signals, we made it our nest. Red Arc needed a home, a fortress the Concord wouldn't suspect. Cradle offered that, and more. Its core AI, Asha, had survived the bombardment. Scarred and fragmented, yes, but functional. She had watched millions die beneath her orbital cameras. She remembered every scream, every child vaporized in the first wave. When we found her, she didn't hesitate to join us. I still remember her voice the first time she spoke. I remember peace. I remember what they did to it. I will help you burn it all down. Good girl. With Asha, we brought Cradle back to life. Its hangars, its forges, its hidden archives. It became more than a base. It became a resurrection. We weren't just building an army. We were building an idea. Red Ark wasn't about flying a Terran flag again. That dream was already dead, buried under treaties and smiling diplomats. No, this time, humanity would move beyond flags, beyond systems, beyond the constraints of galactic politics. This time, we would become a force, not a people, a phenomenon. The first to arrive after me was Commander Rios. She led the siege of Meridian Rift, 5-1 odds. No reinforcements. She still carved a corridor through the enemy fleet like she was slicing cake. When the ceasefire came down, she was arrested for ignoring withdrawal orders. I broke her out myself, took a bullet to the thigh, and lost 2 ribs doing it. Worth it. She greeted me with a handshake and a snarl. I hope you have something worth bleeding for, Captain. I did. Then came Malik, the AI ghost. Not an actual AI. Not anymore. He'd been human once. A recon pilot who uploaded his consciousness to a Black Ops drone network after his body was atomized over Arcturus 4. He drifted through satellite chains and shattered mainframes, gathering data, decrypting secrets. And what he brought us? Proof. Proof that the Vexery had never stopped mobilizing. Proof that the Drellians had already begun economic strangulation protocols on Terran fringe colonies. Proof that the Concord was using human populations as controlled test zones for new tech, without consent, without oversight. Tell me again, I said to Rios as we reviewed the files, that the war is over. She didn't reply. She just tightened her grip on the plasma rifle she hadn't put down since she arrived. We built Fang's next silent strike ships. Fast, unregistered, designed for hit-and-fade incursions into Concord controlled zones, cloaked with refraction fields and wrapped in old Earth Navy protocols. Each one was named after the cities we lost. Tianjin, Chicago, Dakar, Mumbai, Athens, not as memorials, as warnings. By month 3, we had 47 operatives. By month 5, we had 200. They came from every broken shard of the old Terran Defense Corps. Tankers from lunar regiments. Espers from failed psychic projects. Even an ex-ambassador who watched her entire diplomatic team poisoned on a peace tour of Vexery space. Every one of us had been sacrificed for the illusion of peace. And every one of us wanted it to end. Our first strike wasn't loud. Not yet. We intercepted a Concord freight vessel en route to the Seraphine Expanse. Harmless on a manifest, medical supplies, climate tech, education modules. But Malik had already traced the shipping logs. Inside the sealed crates, bioweapons, Vexery strain, human targeted. We didn't destroy the ship. We boarded it. We recorded everything. Then we released it, unharmed, untouched, but scrubbed of its secrets, and leaking footage to every pirate channel, fringe newsfeed, and subverse infonet across the outer systems. Within a week, whispers filled the stars. The peace was cracking. Red Ark had spoken, not with bombs, but with truth. And now, the Vexery are hunting ghosts. Good. Let them chase shadows while we light fires beneath their feet. Let the Concord scream about insurgents and terrorists as they realize the humans they betrayed are slipping through their fingers like smoke. The war didn't end. They just closed their eyes. We're going to open them, one target at a time. They always say war is fought over land, power, control. But sometimes it's fought over memory. Because the galaxy didn't just want us defeated. It wanted us forgotten. They called us a regrettable phase in the official Concord timeline. Human belligerence. A temporary anomaly in galactic civilization. And in the inner worlds, where the Concord broadcasts run thick and honeyed, they bought into it. Terran youth raised under Vexery influence. told to forgive and integrate. Memorials bulldozed for starports. Schools were named after alien dignitaries. Whole generations fed a lie wrapped in a treaty. But we hadn't forgotten, and we made sure the galaxy couldn't either. Our next strike wasn't physical. It was psychological. Rios called it Operation Black Echo. It began with a signal, a repeating pulse on the old Earth resistance frequency, 417 kilohertz sublayer. Every old Terran battlefield used it. The Concord had long since blacklisted it, so we hijacked it. From Cradle's command deck, Asha activated dormant satellites in abandoned war zones. Systems of Concord had marked as dead. But nothing ever really dies out here, especially not rage. One by one, the satellites came online, blinking like stars blinking back awake. Each broadcast one thing. Footage, not propaganda, not doctored history. Raw, unfiltered horror. Helmet cam feeds from the siege of Dresden spires. Civilian screams during the fall of Gaia 9. Human soldiers dragging their wounded through broken cities, while Vexery troops laughed in the skies above. We spliced them into Concord broadcasts, inserted them mid-transmission in luxury liners, into school lectures, into political addresses. For 10 whole minutes, the galaxy was forced to remember, and it wasn't just what they saw, it was what they heard. Every video ended with the same line, whispered in every Terran tongue. The war was not over. You just stopped watching. That was the night the Concord's illusion cracked. They retaliated, of course. A containment force swept through neutral zones. Checkpoints on every Outer Rim colony. Raids on civilian hubs, suspected of harboring sympathizers. The Drellians even imposed trade sanctions on colonies with inconsistent media compliance. But every time they cracked down, more joined us. Miners, traders, smugglers, rogue scholars, outcasts of 1,000 kinds who remembered what the Concord erased. And Red Arc grew. We now had 7 operational cells. Rios to point on Cell Hydra, hit-and-run sabotage deep in Drellian space. Malik fragmented into micronodes embedded in Concord infrastructure. He whispered into defense grids, made their ships blind in key sectors. He became a digital virus with a vendetta. And me? I took a team to site Orpheus. It wasn't on any map. Buried beneath the shattered moon of Trellan's folly, Orpheus was a relic from the war's final year, a hidden Terran black site, filled with things we were never meant to build, weapons too terrible to use during the war. Now, they were perfect. We broke through the vaults, half-choked by radiation and dust. Saw things no human should have seen, and lived. A gravity well projector that could bend a city into itself. Nanite storms programmed to target Vexery biomarkers. Prototype armor that synced directly with neural rage responses. My team hesitated. I didn't. If the Concord feared what humanity could become, then maybe it was time we reminded them why. 3 days later, we tested the Nanites. A Vexery patrol ship had begun scanning the rim near Cradle. We intercepted it, boarded, left no survivors. Then we released the swarm. The ship was vaporized molecule by molecule, not with fire, not with force, with hunger. We recorded the aftermath. And again, we didn't hide it. We leaked it. And the message we left was simple. This was mercy. The next won't be. The Concord started whispering a new term. Not insurgents. Not terrorists. But ascendants. A name born from fear. Because Red Arc wasn't just angry anymore. We were evolving. We weren't waiting for another war. We were the war. Asha said something then, and it stayed with me. They designed peace to make us forget who we were. But I remember, Captain, I remember what humanity is when it has nothing left to lose. I stared out the viewport then, watching the stars flicker in and out like fireflies. No applause. No flag waving. No Terran anthem. Just a silent promise. They ended our war with lies. So we'll start a new one with truths sharper than blades. And by the time they realize we're not fighting for Earth anymore, we'll already be in their homes. There's a silence that follows awakening, not the kind that soothes. the kind that stalks. Because once the stars know your name again, they don't whisper it in awe. They scream it in fear. And that's exactly what we wanted. It was the Allery Commonwealth that struck back first. Not officially, of course. That would mean admitting the Concord's peace had failed. No, this was a deniable war. Silent fleets, black-flagged assassins, disavowed strike teams with no transponders and no mercy. They sent one of those teams to Cradle. We'd been expecting them. Asha found them breaching Deck 9, a shadow squad of biomechanical killers. Cybernetic, silent, precise. They moved like whispers through steel, weapons grafted into their bones. I met them in the old hydroponics dome. 5 of them. 1 of me. I didn't bother with a weapon. I was the weapon. By the time Rios and the others arrived, it was over. The dome floor was painted in viscera. One of them had cut my left arm open to the bone. I wrapped it in synfiber and spat blood on their captain's corpse. I said one thing before passing out. Tell the Concord we're awake now. They got the message. Red Ark wasn't just a resistance anymore. We were an incursion, an invasive thought, a psychological infection, proof that you can't kill a species that has nothing left to lose. Our next mission proved that. We targeted Tessin Forge, a Vexry industrial habitat known for manufacturing synthetic embryos and drone combatants. Thousands of miles of steel orbiting a gas giant in Sector Thal 3. On the surface, it looked like any other Vexry research hub. But thanks to Malik, we knew what they were hiding. Inside one of their chambers, they'd created replicas of us, human replicas, cloned tissue, simulated neural cores, training simulations of Terran combat instincts. They weren't preparing for war. They were rehearsing it. Against us, against the very people the Concord claimed to have made peace with. So we made it our proving ground. Rios led the drop. 3 fangs, silent and cloaked, slid beneath Tessin's sensor field like sharks beneath ice. I followed with a breach team. 12 of us, all former Black Ops. No names, no pasts, just ghosts and armor. We weren't there to destroy Tezsan. We were there to steal it. And we did. Every file, every simulation, every clone they tried to hide. We even took 3 of their prototypes alive, half-grown, twitching masses of tissue in nutrient vats. We showed them to the galaxy in another viral broadcast. The war never ended, we told them. It just changed uniforms. The fallout was immediate. Galactic media spun it as propaganda. But for every polished lie, 10 new uprisings sparked. Old resistance cells in Orion, Europa Drift. Even some on Terra itself began pinging us with encoded messages. We weren't alone anymore. Red Ark had become a movement. But victory always demands something. A price. We paid it on the way out. One of the fangs, Mumbai, took a hit from a drone net. EMP burst ripped through its core. 6 crew gone in a blink. Rios screamed into comms, demanding we go back. But I gave the order. No rescues. We couldn't risk the mission. Her silence afterward was louder than any explosion. Later, in the silence of the war room, I found her staring at Mumbai's insignia etched into a data crystal. I led them, she whispered. I told them we'd all come back. You were wrong, I said. She didn't slap me, but her eyes said she wanted to. You think we're saving humanity, she said, but some of us are just trying to live with ourselves. And then she left. No salute, no rank, just pain. That night, Asha rerouted power to the Memorial Wing. She showed me an old message, one recorded before Cradle fell, from a human diplomat trying to negotiate peace with the Vexry. He never got to finish the sentence. Orbital strike hit, mid-syllable. The screen fizzled and silence reigned. Asha spoke softly. This is the voice the Concord silenced. What voice will we leave behind, Captain? I didn't have an answer. Not then. But I knew one thing. We weren't finished. The Concord wanted to control the narrative. So we become the story. Not the forgotten ghosts of a lost war, but the spark that would ignite a new one. And this time, it wouldn't end with a treaty. It would end with them. I've walked on planets that bled. But nowhere has ever felt as haunted as Varda, 7. It used to be a joint Terran-Allery development world during the early years of the Concord. Terraforming had just begun when the incident occurred, a conveniently unexplained viral outbreak that killed every human on the surface. Allery blamed Terran negligence. Terrans blamed sabotage. The Concord blamed atmospheric instability and wiped it from the records. But the real reason? Buried, erased, redacted. Until now, we returned to Varda, 7 with a full Red Arc detachment, 2 squads, an intel drone swarm, and Rios. It was the first time we'd spoken since Mumbai. She still didn't look at me. That was fine. I wasn't here for forgiveness. I was here for answers. The surface was as dead as expected. No signs of flora, fauna, or synthetic life. But the deeper we dug beneath the surface, the more the truth started breathing again. The underground complex had been sealed, until Malik cracked an archaic security net. Turns out before the outbreak, Varda 7 wasn't a terraforming site. It was a test chamber, bioweapon development, joint funded by both Terran and Allery factions. They weren't creating viruses. They were creating filters, pathogens that could target specific genetic groups. And the humans stationed there? They weren't scientists. They were subjects, sacrificed by their own command structure to validate bioselective warfare protocols. The entire outbreak had been staged to test how quickly a target extinction could be achieved under Concord oversight. And it worked. Perfectly. Varda 7 was humanity's unmarked grave. Rios didn't speak for hours after reading the data logs. Just stood there, breathing hard, helmet off, staring at the test chamber walls like she could see the ghost behind them. When she finally looked at me, her voice cracked. They did this to our people. Our own command approved this. They still wear medals for it. I said. She wiped her face. No tears, just rage. Then we'd tear those medals off with their throats. We called the Operation Grave Fire. We weren't just going to expose what happened on Varda 7. We were going to turn it into a message. We activated the planetary relay towers, long dormant and buried beneath decades of sand and silence. Asha synchronized them with every major broadcast pulse on the outer Concord grid. At 0900 hours system-wide, the galaxy watched the dead rise. Footage from the test chambers. Screams of dying Terran workers. Terran children sealed into medical containment as control groups. Asha overlaid it all with a single phrase in hundreds of galactic dialects. This is what peace looks like. The reaction was instant. Civil protests on 9 Terran colonies. Allery governments scrambling to deny involvement. Concord officials deploying damage control AI swarms. A Concord admiral even had the gall to call it a rogue fabrication. So we responded with a gift. The original orders, signed by Terran and Allery officials. Authenticated by a forgotten Cradleside node we'd found weeks ago. Truth can't be buried forever. Not when you're willing to dig with both hands and a knife. They sent a fleet to intercept us. 10 ships. Only 3 made it past orbit. None left alive. We didn't just defeat them. We broadcast it. Rios led the charge. She didn't flinch. Not once. And when she emerged from her armor, stained in ash and blood, she stood atop a Vexery command pod and roared into the comms feed. This is Varda 7. This is what happens when you forget us. Red Arc remembers. It went viral in less than an hour. Across the galaxy, even species that had once cheered for the Concord paused, because now they saw the cracks. They saw the blood behind the treaties. They saw us. And still, the Concord refuses to call it war, because doing so would mean admitting they lost control. So they use new words now: containment failure, sector unrest, localized ascent. But behind closed doors, we intercepted their comms. They're scared, terrified of what we'll uncover next. And they should be, because Varda 7 was just one grave. There are others, dozens more buried in redacted files and sealed worlds. We're not fighting for a home anymore. We're fighting for every truth they buried beneath peace. And by the time we're done, there won't be anywhere in the galaxy left for them to hide. You'd think they'd learn. After Cradle, after Tezsan, after Varda 7. But the Concord wasn't made of visionaries. It was built by bureaucrats with polished smiles and rotten spines. And when bureaucrats lose control, they don't seek truth. They seek containment. So they sent the Skybreaker, not a fleet, not a task force, a superstructure, 4 kilometers long, powered by triphasic dark matter compression, built in orbit over the Drellian core worlds. It was a mobile judgment platform designed for one purpose: total planetary sterilization. It wasn't a weapon of defense. It was extermination in orbit, and they moved it toward Freehold, a neutral colony in the Kepler fringe, populated by Terran exiles and pacifists. No Red Ark bases, no weapons, no threats, just humans, and that's all it took. They called it a preventative show of force. But we knew what it really was: genocide, repackaged for legal clarity. And this time, we weren't going to broadcast a message. We were going to tear out their goddamn throat. The mission was suicide from the start. Skybreaker had a shield matrix stronger than anything we'd encountered. Its defense grid could atomize a cruiser before it got within 200 clicks. But Malik, God's bless his fragmented madness, found a gap. The Skybreaker's weapons array required split-second recharging sequences, just microseconds. But in that time, the vending cores opened, exposed. Like a giant holding its breath, he told us. So we held ours. We only had one ship capable of surviving long enough to get close. Athens, heavily modified, armor-plated, plasma sheet, and linked directly to Asha's predictive targeting arrays. It would be a single run. No backup. No second chances. I volunteered to fly it. Rios didn't argue. We'd both seen too much. Lost too much. Maybe part of me was looking for a reason not to come back. I remember the Skybreaker rising over Freehold, like a black eclipse, a wall of metal and hatred. Civilians below scrambling, praying, running, all of it pointless. And then we hit. Athens tore through the outer ring like a burning dagger. We took fire. Shield failures, deck collapse, hull breaches. But Asha screamed vector corrections into my skull in real time. Then came the venting cycle. For seconds to align. 3 to fire. 2. The Skybreaker opened his mouth. I rammed the core spike straight into its throat. The explosion wasn't fire. It was color. A spectrum of heat, light, plasma, and memory. It folded inward like a dying star, before vomiting outward in a roar that tore clouds into static. Half the Skybreaker vaporized instantly. The rest fell straight into Freehold's ocean. Casualties? 1. Me. Except I didn't die. Not exactly. Athens survived, barely. Asha rerouted power into a cryo chamber seconds before the reactor melted. The emergency pod jettisoned, and the ocean swallowed us. I woke up 3 days later, floating in silence, bleeding and alive. And the sky was clear. The galaxy saw us that day. Not just Red Ark. Humanity. Not the diplomats. Not the corporations. Us. The ones who never stopped fighting. The ones who tore the stars open just to be heard. Suddenly, silence wasn't enough for the Concord anymore. Suddenly, they needed a war council. Suddenly, we weren't ghosts. We were a threat. Freehold declared itself a sovereign Terran system 2 hours later. 6 other fringe colonies followed. One by one, old flags were pulled out of hidden chests. Not out of nostalgia, but defiance. Red Ark wasn't alone anymore. We were an anthem, and across the stars, even the species who once spat on our ashes began to hesitate. Because if humanity could destroy a superweapon with one ship and a death wish, what else could we do? That's when the message came. Not from the Concord. From Earth. Real Earth. A hidden channel buried in the crust of Mars. A neurostream encryption only older field commanders would recognize. A voice not heard since the last Terran fleet vanished over Proxima. It wasn't a cry for help. It wasn't a warning. It was a rally. Red Ark. If you're hearing this, it means we're ready. We've been waiting, biding, building. The old war is over. So let's start the real one. It was signed, Admiral Janus Cross, former commander of the Terran Ascendant Fleet, presumed dead. I looked at Rios. She didn't need to speak. We were done reacting, done exposing. Now, it was time to ascend. And the galaxy? It was about to remember what it means to push a species too far. The war they ended was made of rules, of chain of command, of acceptable losses and palatable lies. The war we started, it was something else entirely. Not war, not rebellion. Evolution. Admiral Janus Cross wasn't dead. He was underground, literally, buried beneath Mars in a command vault older than the Concord itself, surrounded by survivors of the Ascendant Fleet. Terran vessels presumed lost, destroyed, or captured. Dozens of ships, hundreds of veterans, thousands of weapons, all hidden, all waiting. For us, he briefed us through a fractured comlink from the Martian vault, a man aged in exile but still iron in voice. They buried us, but they forgot we're seeds. He told us about the real end of the war, the deal Earth's leaders made in secret, under duress, a surrender dressed as diplomacy, a peace carved out by genocide. In exchange for survival, humanity would retreat, dismantle its fleets, disband its colonies, bow, smile, forget, but Cross didn't forget. He went dark, and now that red arc had torn open the stars, the time had come, not to restart the war, but to end it properly. We called it Ascension Protocol, not just a military campaign, not a counterstrike, a declaration. Red Arc and the Ascendant Fleet would merge, two halves of a sleeping giant waking up, one heart, one fist, one final purpose. We weren't going to play by their rules anymore. We'd write our own. Our first move, the Spire, a Concord deep network relay hub station at the galactic core, a data fortress, heavily guarded, unbreachable. At least, to them. To Asha and Malik, it was a temple, a symbol of the Concord's grip on narrative, surveillance, and control. So we broke it. Rios led the armada. The Ascendant Fleet emerged from slip space like a forgotten myth, scarred warships wreathed in fire, streaking toward the Spire like judgment from the past. We didn't ask for surrender. We didn't want it. The Spire fell in less than 3 hours. We didn't just destroy its systems. We reversed them. And then we broadcast everything. Every cover-up. Every Terran colony buried in silence. Every civilian sacrificed in the name of stability. Every biological weapon signed off by Concord senators. Across the entire network. Across all species. Across every world. Truth, unfiltered, uncontrollable, broke through the walls they had spent decades building. And suddenly, there were no sides anymore. Just those who remembered. And those who ran. Rebellions flared across half the galaxy. A Vexary noble house defected. A Drellian chancellor was executed by his own people. And hundreds of Terran-descended worlds declared independence. No longer Concord. No longer Red Arc. Something new. A species reborn not in spite of the war, but because of it. I stood on the deck of Athens Reforged, the flagship of the Ascendantry Dark Union, as the stars shifted around us. We weren't just a spark anymore. We were the firestorm. Rios came up beside me, dressed not in armor, but new uniform, black, gold, and crimson. No insignia, no empire, just meaning. She looked out the viewport, voice low. Do you think we finally earned peace? I thought of my daughter, of the cities, the graves, the lies, and then I said, no, but we've earned the right to build one. The Concord tried one last push, a desperate gambit. They summoned an alliance tribunal, demanded a ceasefire, claimed they'd reassess and restructure, apologize for historical misunderstandings. We sent them a response, a single data burst, a recording from Cradle Station. From the first day I decided to stop obeying and start remembering. You told us the war was over. You buried us in silence. But you forgot we're human. We don't die quietly. We rise. And so we did, not to rebuild the past, but to forge the future, one without concords, without chains, without false peace wrapped in genocide. The stars were no longer theirs to govern. They were ours to shape, because they claimed the war was over. So we started a new one, and we won.